Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. We're just going to do a quick little intro for this episode. I'm really quite excited about this episode. It turned out to be a lot more work than I was expecting, so I've split it up into a two-parter. And the first part here, we're going to be laying the foundation for a brand new district in the city of Queensport. We're going to circle around over it right now. It's coming into view here. This is essentially this wedge shape we're looking at. We're going to be building the district of Lower Queensport. And we're going to be doing a considerable amount of work to give this district a truly unique identity within the city. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the episode. Let's get started. Well, this is a little embarrassing. I probably spent 2 hours recording the building and initial detailing for this district here, but it looks like I might have forgot to hit record. So, surprise, it's all done. Sorry, I really would have liked you to see how this was filled in here. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But what I can do is give you a little overview of the neighborhood so far and some of my initial thinking while I was building it. Now, Lower Queensport is essentially the downtown slum of our city. And it extends, essentially it's this area you're seeing right below you here. Maybe I could bring up the district if I had already painted in. Yes, Lower Queensport. So we can sort of see it there. You can see the outline of it. This is the extent of it. And essentially, the thinking here is how this fits in with the city is down in this area right here, this empty area we're looking at. This is essentially the modern downtown core of the city, obviously yet to be built. And on this side, we would have the historic dock district, which how I'm imagining the city right now is this is all has been redeveloped into some really swanky apartments, condos, restaurants, businesses, you name it. And what Lower Queensport is, if we think about this in terms of the city, this would have been the downtown core during the 1930s, 1940s, and into the 50s. And as we move into the 60s and 70s, and as these areas around it get redeveloped, this area just kind of falls into essentially a decline. And over the decades to follow, becomes the actual slum of the city. Now, this little section of Lower Queensport here is kind of like the more acceptable part. The townhomes and the apartments in this area are inexpensive, but the neighborhood is relatively safe, and people still like living there. It's when you cross, I believe this is called Dean Street. Yeah, it's once you cross Dean Street and get into this area, this is not so pleasant and not so nice. And the primary construction of the neighborhood is all North America mixed use buildings, which fit in nicely. They have mostly, historically, they would fit in with early 20th century architecture. So they all work quite well. The rest of the buildings are essentially just the row homes for residents to live in. And that's essentially the makeup of the neighborhood. Plenty of empty space behind buildings. Property values around here are low, so density is not as extreme. Lots and lots of surface parking pretty much everywhere. Now, the only other step I took here is I took some time to essentially do some surface detailing. Nothing beyond that. So using static noises, excellent ground textures to kind of get some varied concrete and pavement. Some of this looks quite nice. Still figuring it out. The main thing with ground textures and decals is the stacking order of how these things work together. Now, like here, some of these textures, like this sidewalk texture, will overlap the road, but other textures won't, which appear to be sidewalk textures, won't actually overlap the sidewalk, but may overlap the road. So, yeah, there's a stacking issue. There's a bit of a learning curve to it, what works with what. One thing I did notice is these parking lots in the back here. These were all done with, like, you can see the lane markings here. So these are all like parking lots I created, but as soon as I go put these decals on, it obliterates all the markings, so you can't see it. I actually don't mind. I actually think it looks, in some of these neighborhoods, I think it actually looks kind of neat, but it's something I have to keep in mind as I'm putting down the decals. If I actually want a parking lot with parking lines, I can't use any of these for that, which is unfortunate. I have to figure out a new solution. So yeah, this is the basic layout for the neighborhood. It doesn't have any detailing yet other than the ground textures. I did sort of make some attempts here to kind of like put in some graffiti, some initial thoughts, but that's as far as I've got on it. So yeah, it's unfortunate I didn't record it, but in terms of detailing, most of this neighborhood, like especially the core of it, most of it is, you've heard the term flyover state. That's kind of what this is. In the grand scheme of the city as a whole, most of our views of this particular neighborhood are going to be flyover views from probably about this altitude. So we don't necessarily need to spend huge amounts of time detailing. Although in the episode coming up after this one, I'm going to spend a lot of time putting in some details which hopefully can be seen from this altitude, or at the very least from this sort of altitude. Things that actually give this area a very distinct flavor. Now, luckily, I did record the segment where I detail in this strip of businesses along the main road. And that does include some detailing of the concrete and pavement. So even though you didn't get to see this down here will give you a pretty good idea, the general procedure I went through to detail in the rest. And I think I'm not going to say too much more. I'm pretty sure I kind of go over all this in that part of the video. So yeah, this is just a real basic overview of the initial construction. And now let's continue with some actual building. I'm just going to lay down a few buildings along the main road here and do a few other alterations. One of the first things I'm going to do is this block of houses here. We're going to change these so they're actually facing the main street here. Okay, I don't really have a huge number of options here for these homes, but this isn't particularly supposed to be a nice area, so a lot of this stuff is going to have to go. Sorry for evicting you. Please don't loiter in my parks. I'm sure you can find somewhere to live. Actually, hold on. Before we get too carried away there. What I want to do is I actually do want to quickly put in some low-income housing here. We're going to get rid of a few businesses right in here, and we're going to look for I think these will work. I don't want massively high buildings here. So I think, yeah, these will probably do quite well. And we're gonna I don't know how I feel about that. It's not very imaginative. It's pretty utilitarian, but then again, it is social housing, so it's not like they ever use a lot of imagination with that sort of stuff. I think we'll leave it for now. It can always be redone in the future if it bothers me that much. Did I not just delete everything here? Am I losing my mind? Oh no. Please just let me get rid of it. Oh, okay. It's this block I did. Oh my god. Okay. This is less than perfect. I would rather it not cover up the tiled surfaces, but it will do in a pinch. I just want these areas to look like they're a little less maintained. Okay, I've been looking at this. This does not look good. It's just way too much social housing in too small of a space. So I'm going to do a bit of pruning here. I have reinstalled the homeless mod. It still doesn't seem to be working properly, which is unfortunate. I don't mind the idea of homeless in the city, but at the moment it's difficult to know if it's legitimate or if it's a bug within the game. So I just reinstalled it. Hopefully that will start fixing some of the problem. I've noticed this, which is like, I don't know what's going on down here. Like, why are all these people standing around here? If I click on them, this one's sleeping, this one's idling. So I'm assuming they're at home. Yeah, this one's idling as well. Idling, yeah. So I assume they're at home, but why they're all gathered in the same spot? I mean, I know there's gathering spots or gathering areas that I think maybe in these ones, I'm not sure, maybe it's bugged. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of pruning, and it's going to be painful. And thank God I reinstalled the homeless bug. Otherwise, I think I would be in serious trouble here. But we're going to get rid of these ones here. I think that's a much more manageable amount of low-income housing. We're also going to get rid of this road. We'll leave it here. Okay, first we got to... That's way too many crossings. That. Okay. And we're just going to move this road over a block. Like so. I have this awkward business in here. We're just going to get rid of him. Make sure we get rid of that zoning that was allowing that to grow in there. And what I want to do over here is I want to try to increase the space behind the buildings just a little bit. So we're going to bring these closer to the street. Actually, I wonder if we could bring them... Okay, that seems like a much more reasonable amount of social housing for a particular area. Perhaps we could recolor these. I know that looks a little bit on the bland side, but social housing, they don't usually, it's usually the materials are pretty low cost, right? So I don't want to get too crazy in there. Now we have a huge amount of density and not enough parking. So we're going to create some new parking. Now, I believe I picked up this little trick from Canada Moose Plays, but it's an excellent trick. We can take a little alley road here. You can remove the sidewalks, and then we can add parking. Like so. And now we have a very easy way to just draw in some very basic parking where we need it. Pretty neat idea. Now, these aren't friendly spaces back here. And we're just going to give him a little basic greenery. So my thinking for this strip we see in front of us here, how I'm going to imagine this area is, if we think about this in terms of like the history of the city, at some point in the city's past, this might have been light industrial along this road. And as the city grew, the light industrial got pushed out and those spaces got paved over into parking lots. And because of the low property values here and for the sake of city lore, the high crime rate, they never really get redeveloped into anything else. They just, for the most part, remain parking lots. Now we'll come back in and we will detail this up and make it look a little interesting. So for the rest of this episode, my main focus is just, I'm going to be putting down sort of like a foundational detailing level. It's primarily going to be the paved surfaces. I'm going to have to break this episode up into a couple parts. I have a whole bunch of custom decals I want to add to the area, but they're not quite ready yet. And to really, focus in on the detailing here, I think it's going to take another episode. I don't want to try to cram it all into this one episode and make this way, way too long. So for the rest of the episode, I'm just going to be doing the basic ground detailing here. Okay, I think that's going to be it for this episode. So this is essentially just a foundation level. Think of it like a base coat, I suppose, if we want to approach things in those sorts of terms. This allows me to come back and pick the areas I want to focus my detailing on. And, obviously a few things are probably going to change, come out, and there's still stuff that needs to be kind of edited out. Some of these businesses are going to be given new identities. And I have a bunch of my own custom decals I made to hopefully give this area a bit of its own personality. Okay, that brings us to the end of part 1 for this particular project. I've had a lot of fun building out this particular neighborhood, and I think once we get into part 2, I think this area is really going to come to life in a big way. It's probably the most work I put into any City Skylines project to date, and a lot of that work wasn't even in the game. But anyway, you're going to have to wait to part 2 to see how that all turns out. And I can't wait to be able to show it to you. If you stuck around to the end of the episode, thank you so much. I hope you have enjoyed it. And until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.